or I've read several books of, William Buhlman. If you don't know who he is, he's a well known character in the spiritual community and has been for many years. He actually has like a retreat where he teaches people how to induce out of body experiences. And he's essentially the ultimate out of body experiencer because the things that he describes as in his books are detailed and precise and to the point of every kind of thing that you can imagine. And I've just been in such deep contemplation of what he sees and what he's trying to say about these things. And I also find it so fascinating how completely different his experiences are to my own. And that makes me wonder, right? Like each one of us is indeed our own universe, our own infinity. And in my own infinity quantumly oscillates with things that are in the same tune, in the same frequency that my mind is meant to expand in, if that makes any sense. And his is his own frequency and musical tone that expands in his own way, which makes me wonder if there's the infinite possibilities to see whatever you possibly can. So he claims that in afterlife states, there's multitudes of different realities. Nothing shocking. I would probably agree. One reality is what he calls like healing centers, where souls who have had traumatic lives, they go and they go through some kind of very intricate healing process where their soul is like reorganized and recalibrated and rebalanced. And other people have talked about these healing centers. He also talks about these realms where he calls it a soul graduates. And when a soul graduates, they reach a point where they are able to create and manifest art with their minds alone. So they essentially become creators themselves, which again I would also agree with, and I would agree that we have always been creators forever though. And then is the consensus reality. So he calls these the consensus realities, and these are souls who are not in a healing center and they're not in a higher realm learning to expand their soul, but rather they are stuck in a collective thought form where you have people of like mind going through the same motions over and over, right? So he gives many examples of this where he talks about this large Islamic mosque and people are walking around this Kaaba like structure and are just obsessed with Islam or Christianity or whatever the case may be. And he says that his own mom is stuck in one of these Christian consensus realities and where she just repeats this cycle of going to church every Sunday and that he tried to get her out of there, but to her, this is heaven. This is her version of heaven. And then there's other souls that he describes that are in a worse off state. He gives off an example of a soldier who died in the Iraq War, and to protect his fellow soldier, he threw a grenade into an insurgent that was shooting in his direction, but the grenade killed that insurgent and also killed an entire family in the house. And he's basically reliving this guilt in his mind in this endless loops. And this is really interesting to me because I completely agree that collective forces are extremely powerful and they have an absolute vice grip on this planet. And actually, that is probably the why resets happen and why they're necessary. Because if the collective can't, if they're just constrained in this vice grip of no momentum, the program of Earth or whatever you call it, it has to by default keep moving forward. It on its own has to keep evolving. It's on a timer. This reality is on a timer. You either evolve with it or you don't, or it resets itself and it moves on. And these collective realities that he describes, and I wonder, like, are these real souls that are reliving churches and mosques and temples? He even says there's entire cities where people live these dull, mundane lives. Now, is he observing real souls, or is he observing like an imprint of real, like, right? So the earth is in an infinite cycle, an infinite revolving cycle. Is he watching like a replay or reanimation of specific collective thoughts from previous earth cycles? Like for like imagine a CD disc or a DVD. Like these are like magnetic imprints on the ether that he's watching, or are they real souls that are in this condition where they gravitate to their comfort zone and they don't want to get out? And he talks about this many times, how they're stuck and people try to help them and they don't want help, like, and like people addicted to gambling and alcohol and all sorts of things, and they're just in these loops and these loops. And I'm not saying it's not real. I'm sure that can be a real thing. I'm just talking about, like, from my personal experience, when every time I go out of body, I'm immediately more expansive. So I'm immediately hyper aware. So I can't see myself like being stuck in some ridiculous loop in the out of body state, because your consciousness just expands 100-fold. And because that's what that's what I experience. I mistakenly assume that this is what other souls experience, but that may not be the case. They may be in like the same dwarf like state when they leave their body and are not expansive because they're not aware that they can be, or it's not something that has ever entered their mind as a possibility, which I can see as a possibility. And yeah, I know this video is kind of a rant, but look, I'm in really deep contemplative thought here. Like, I've personally never seen these realities. What I perceive in my out of body states, I think these are real dimensions that I observed, real parallel realities. And again, not saying his aren't, his are probably just as real as mine. I'm just a little bit confused as to why a soul who's immediately expansive upon exiting the body, why they would gravitate towards these repeating loops that are very limiting and very constrained. Like, everything here is rigid, like, and structured. This reality is unnaturally structured, and life is completely upside down and nonsensical. It's antithetical to the natural state of the soul, this place. It's anti soul. Everything is done rigid on a this, like a program, a timed program, and the soul does not live by a time program. The soul is naturally free. The soul is naturally liberated. So if these realities exist, and I'll tell you about the closest thing I've experienced to what he's talking about, then I can't imagine that these cycles last too long, because but he does say in the book that the soul has to come to its own realization to break from the consensus reality, or to break from its own guilt or shame, or whatever is holding it back from moving forward. And yeah, so the closest thing I've experienced to this is my hellish out of body experience, which was a terrible, dense nightmare. And indeed, this was a consensus reality, absolutely 100%, because every soul there, and they were real souls, they were definitely real. Every soul there had the same malevolent hatred, they had the same darkness, they had the same desire to inflict pain and suffering, and receive joy out of that. So they were a consensus reality. They were together as a group doing what they loved. And it saddens me that I ended up there. Even in my imperfect state, I couldn't imagine I would be there with my own darkness, which I have plenty of. But I don't think I was ever that dark, but maybe it was just shown to me for a purpose. But again, that's in conclusion what I think. And it's just interesting to see the perspective of other out of body experiencers, and how they differ from my own. And I've read many others that I like too, that are completely different as well. Um, what's his name? Can't remember his name now, but I have a few favorites. So it's all really unique stuff. Hey, Vero. Yeah, Night Owl. I'm at the church, about to get off. Everyone left. Yeah.